Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Domina Della Pie, Mistress Sasha Storm. I want to talk about poverty and how being and coming from or being in a position of lack creates hatred. I was a little girl. I didn't have the best life as a child, but I didn't have the worst. In fact, I believe my life was great, not because of any wealth. My family, they were not really wealthy, but we were not poor. That meant that we had land, we had agricultural land, we had food growing, we had a business selling food. There was always abundance of at least food around me. And I knew where to go if I wanted the best of any fruit growing on any tree, because the area I lived in at the time was not developed. And so it was mostly bush. But in the bush were these mangoes and guavas and cannops and pawpaws, sugar, custard apple, soursop. I mean, we had plums with cashew nuts we had sugar cane, coffee, cocoa, you name it, anything a child could want. I mean, I was literally in Eden, Garden of Paradise. I was blessed. Yes, I am blessed. And I am thankful, so thankful for that. Because the flip side of this was here, my mother had my mother's best friend at the time was a black. My mother was very light-skinned. Her best friend was very dark-skinned. My mother never had a life of struggle. Her best friend lived a struggle life. And the best friend lived in a yard with other people of very low income or no income, very poor people, and these little shacks. And I was always upset at my mother because this woman, her friend, would have the daughter, her oldest daughter, who was about my age, and her daughter was very light-skinned, but the mother was very dark-skinned. Now, the daughter, her father was like a rich man on the island, but he didn't claim her, he didn't claim the mother, and this poor girl was living in this yard, in this little shack. It was one room with a little divider, a partition, and she had siblings, like 5 siblings. There were like 6 of them in this little shack. And I remember one of them was burnt. The poor little girl was burnt. Her face, her eyes, she was burnt. And she had a brother. I swear he was gay. He was gay, but, we didn't talk about that stuff at that time. And she had other siblings. But what stood out is her, because she was always sullen, angry looking, and she hated me. I'm not sure why she hated me, but I think I could figure out why. I wouldn't see her often, thankfully, but when she saw me, I would greet her and she would pinch me, like pinch. And I'm like, whoa, this girl doesn't like me. This is my enemy. She wants to hurt me. Pinching is not nice. I don't like to be pinched. I hate being pinched. I don't pinch people. I pinch people if they pay me to. It's called white man as my submissive slaves in my dungeon or playroom. Then I pinch. Usually their nipples. Anyway, she hated me. It was weird because we were in like practically the same age, and I didn't understand that. But I didn't question it either, because we didn't live that close. We were in the city, but I was in the rich area, she was in the poor area. And listen, I was not in the rich area because we were rich either. I just happened to always end up in the rich area, surrounded by abundance. And so I don't know and understand lack. It just doesn't even make sense to me, because my spirit is of giving and being generous. Generosity of spirit, I always give to those I believe to be less fortunate, although those less fortunate often are not less fortunate, but actors. I've given to many people who pretend to not have, but they have a lot more than I do. Anyway, this girl hated me, and I didn't understand why. It made me so sad, because I don't know, maybe it was because of my color. I was so dark-skinned and she was light. And on the island at the time, there was colorism practiced. They favored light-skinned people. So my mom is favored. I'm not, right? Now, I don't know, she wasn't favored because she was in the yard with all the other poor people and they didn't give a shit, because her mother was very dark, right? And so I always wondered why this girl was sent to our home, where she would bring food. She'd bring food to my mother, which made no sense to me, because we had all the food. We didn't need food. We didn't need anybody's food. But my mom didn't like to cook. She has never admitted that, but the fact of the matter is everybody in my family cooks, loves cooking. We are culinary artists, except my mom. My mom don't give a shit. Mind you, she can cook. She can cook very well, but she just chooses really not to. She'd rather go and make money. Make money. She thinks cooking doesn't make money. The reason why, because they never thought, my family, all people who cook very well, who are skilled, so talented in the kitchen, have such good taste, and instead of coming together and, doing a business together, a family business, which would be very successful, they have these ideas of their grandiosity, and they want to show how they are great. Oh, my brothers, my sister, especially that one brother and that one sister, they are just everything. And so they could never possibly even imagine coming together with family, because they turn their nose up. They look down on family, But whatever. Anyway, at the time in the Caribbean, on the island, Dominica is the name of my island. And I remember this girl bringing food. And I'm like, ew, why is my mom eating that? It's gross. Her mother cooked, there were some people who really don't know how to cook. And when they cook, they'll cook something and then they'll throw like oil on top of it. Like if they make a soup, chicken soup, fish soup, whatever soup they make, they pour oil on it. I'm not gonna throw up. So the site, especially at the time, they used to use plastic a lot. I hate plastic. I will not eat or drink out of plastic. But here they are sending you food in a plastic container, and it's not like plastic containers here, like from margarine or the shit that they eat. It was a plastic container for food. And my mom would accept that and eat that and enjoy that. And I'm like, ew, I'm not eating that. So with all the abundance of food around me, what I would do is cook my own food. Since I'm a little girl, I'm cooking my own food. So that one morning, oh my God, we had chicken. The chicken was so good, because when we get chicken, it's fresh off the farm, fresh off the little man who's running, from his coop, and he has a few. It's not factory farming. It's the best way to eat. Sustainability, unlike what these people who say that word, but they don't really know what it means, because you cannot sustain on these large projects of theirs that, they are so beyond our earth, right? So why are they even here? They should kill themselves. But anyway, that morning, I remember I had seasoned this chicken, and I chose the drumstick. The drumstick was so big. And I chose that drumstick to put. We had one of them old time stoves, the nice, really fancy ones with all the little compartments, because the house I was in was a rich house. It was a rich white people's house. And there I was, because my mom was taking care of the rich old white women. There were two of them. One passed away, but at the time there were two. So in that house, there was how many rooms? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were these 5 big bedrooms. Tastefully appointed, honey. The furniture, mahogany and marble, and it's the kind of furniture like when you move in, because you're so rich, you just put that furniture there and you never move it again. It's for life. And so they grew up there, they lived there, and then they're aging, and then they need somebody to take care of them. So I guess my mom was like a PSW, and there I was living with her in that big house. And the attic, there were 2 rooms in the attic. That's where I would disappear for hours, reading and writing and reading. And my mom had some room in the back of the house where she had her own bathroom. But my mom's room, it was not as fancy as the rest of the mansion. So I'm like, I can't be sharing this room and bed with my mom. My mom needs privacy. So here I am. I'm like about, 12 or 13. And I decided, well, there's the 2 rooms in the attic. I've occupied them. I stay a lot of time there reading. Nobody goes there with me. So it's my area. There's my part of the house. And then I'm like, well, there are 2 empty. There's that one empty bedroom. The sisters are living in these rooms, sleeping in these rooms. That's their rooms. And then there is the other sister who had passed away. It seemed like she was the princess of all princesses. And she had the grandest room. And I took that room because it was just there, not occupied. So anyway, in this house is where that morning I had cooked that chicken drumstick. It was big. It wasn't as big as a turkey drumstick, but pretty close. And I didn't need, so that's why I only did one. If I had known she was coming, the kind of person I am, I would have put an extra piece on for her. But I didn't know she was coming because my mom is very secretive, don't talk about her business. So I never know what's going on with my mother. So, the girl arrives. I answer the door. She asks, she's here for my mother.
this time, I guess she had come to ask. My mother was going to give her mother a loan, give her some money. And and also explained to me how that would work the relationship, because my mother had more than her mother, and yet my mother was taking, food from her mother, which made no sense to me. I'm like, this woman has all these kids, all these mouths to feed. Why is my mom taking food from her? And that would upset me. So I realized that when her mother was in need, she would come to my mom, and my mom would give her money. And that's how they evened it out, this friendship of theirs, which I never really fully understood, because it's not like my mom went there and hung out, or that she hung out with my mom. It's just they'd known each other, I guess, when they were younger, and they maintained a friendship. And my mom seemed to really like to hang out with people who were less advantaged. She never really liked to hang out with her class of people, which were more like merchant class, people who own things and businesses, and she never really cared for those. The men she went with were always poor, of poor backgrounds of lack. So that's another thing that kind of mind fucked me, because those guys never treated my mother as she deserved to be treated. But anyway, I had just finished eating that drumstick. Man, listen, I knew how to season meat, because Dominicans, to me, nobody can tell me that Dominicans, and I don't mean Dominican Republicans, Dominican Republic people, I mean Dominica from Dominican from Dominica. We know how to take care of a piece of meat, to wash it, to clean it, to season it, marinate it, and cook it to perfection. And that chicken drumstick, that's what I had for breakfast that morning. That's what I wanted as a child of that age. That's what I wanted. When kids are waiting for a mom to make them eggs or some shit, bowl of cereal. No, I wanted the friggin' drumstick that was grilled, and I grilled that shit. Because in that little ornate, old school stove with all the little compartments, there was a little compartment on the very top for grilling. Man, I made the best stuff on there. And that chicken drumstick got grilled that morning. I kept on turning it so it was perfect. Anyway, I ate that. It was so good, so tasty. That was my breakfast, because at the time I never really had a big appetite. I still don't. So I wouldn't want 2 drumsticks. One was enough for me. And when I finished eating it, as I finished, and I never gnaw on a bone. I don't suck a bone dry. I don't clean a bone. I leave something on a bone, because I don't need to eat. I'm not hungry. I'm not, I have food in abundance. So I'm okay. And so there was a little bit of flesh and thing here and there on my bone. And I just finished. So, that was it. I'm done. And so she arrived, and she asked me to call my mom for her. I went to get my mom. And no, my mom was in another section of the house. And I had to go, and it's a big house. So, take me a minute, 2 minutes. I got my mom. I said, this girl is here. Her name was Grrl. Yes, Grrl. I went to get my mom for Grrl, who had been my tormentor. And I had left my bone from the chicken I just ate on the table, and went to fetch my mother for this girl, who really should have been my friend, because she was like my age, but for some reason she hated me, and I never understood why. So when I came back to tell her my mom's coming, my mom was doing whatever she was doing, and in a minute or so she'd be finished, and she'd be attending to this girl. And why she was there for money. And I was in shock. I was shocked because there was Grrl standing by my plate. She was standing by my plate on the table, and there was my plate, and a bone. I didn't recognize my bone. It was no longer a bone. It was a mound of powder. So it actually took me a little bit of time to figure out what just transpired. What happened? What happened between me leaving my bone here on this plate, on this table with you present, and me leaving, going to call my mom, telling my mom you're here, and then I come back, my bone's no longer there, but there's a mound of powder? You gnawed my bone down to a powder? Oh my God. It dawned on me at this very moment that, wow, no, I can understand why this girl hated me. Because here I was, like this little girl having a freaking big ass, nice tasting, well seasoned, fresh from the person who was raising it, piece of chicken. And what did she have that morning? She probably had no breakfast that morning, or maybe a piece of bread with half an egg, We had a bakery, so I couldn't really relate, but I could understand, and that's why I always gave to those who had less than I did. But many of them hated me just for having, they hated me just because I had. So here's this girl who had always pinched me. Every time she saw me, thankfully it was not often, she would pinch me, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm trying to be your friend, and she's showing me, like animosity, hostility. She hates me. This has been my relationship with black people, black women especially, but black people in general. They always see me as someone who has more than they do, and they hate me. They just hate me. And it's funny because on social media, I recall there was a young black girl. Like, I really liked the girl. She was all feisty, sassy, and she was getting into herself. She was getting to know herself. She was hanging out with these feminazis, and so she was being empowered, and I love that, and I embrace that in her. But one day she made a post. I remember I screenshot it and kept it for a couple of years because it always was so remarkable to me that she expressed herself in that way. Basically, she said that anybody who's not poor, I hate. I hate anyone who's not poor. And the thing is, I never saw myself as poor. I never saw myself as poor because I was always surrounded by abundance. And if I'm surrounded by abundance, damn it, I'm going to have some. So I'm not poor. I'm not living in poverty or lack. But those who do tend to hate. They hate and resent, but they need to be taught. You never know the circumstances. I could tell you more backstories about my situation in that place and how I came to be there. But the fact of the matter is, I was there, and you who hated me so much. Meanwhile, her father was a very wealthy man on the island. Should I name names? What the hell? Her last name was Green. Her last name was Green because, it was green. And green still today is like my favorite color because I so enjoyed the garden. Eden, I'm a gardener. I'm a farmer, I'm a gardener. I love gardening. I love green, various shades, different shades of green. I just love green. Her name was Green, and she hated me, man. She resented me. She envied me. She was jealous of me. And she wanted to make me cry by pinching me. And she was reds. They call them red skin, them light skin black people. I was very dark skinned. I was black. These other black girls would say to me, black girls blacker than me, as my brother reminded me. He said, Adela, they were darker than you, and they were calling you black, and you're black like tar. So that's the hatred. So that's part. Maybe she hated me because I was dark, but her mom was dark too. Her mom was very dark skinned. Anyway, that's the story. This girl who came to my house. It wasn't my mother's house, actually. My mother was working in this big mansion, and so I occupied this room, right? It's one of the sisters that passed away how many years prior, and that room was just there, like nobody used it. I'm like, damn, look at this big, it's like a king size 4-poster bed with, wow, this is the rich people's, this is millionaire, living. I'm like, this bed is not occupied. Nobody uses this bed. Why let it go to waste? I'm very practical. So I started sleeping in that bed in the middle of the day when, you get tired, you need to take a nap. I take a nap on the bed. At night, it's time to go to sleep. I sleep. It became my bed, my room. But when I would hear there were 2 sisters, when I would hear the one who could walk coming, I would duck under the bed. I'd hide under the bed. And one day I was sleeping and I was dreaming. And so when I heard the the shuffling of the feet, the slippers of this rich white bitch, she was white, coming to the room. I don't know what the hell she wants in the room because that's not her room. Her sister is dead. What are you coming here for? Because she would come to, people, old people are very, nosy. They want to know what's going on. And hey, I'm an older person. I'm nosy. I want to know what's going on. So she was coming to the room, and I was dreaming that it was happening. I didn't think it was really happening. So it was like, oh, I'm just dreaming that Sister Mary is coming. And meanwhile, Sister Mary opened the door, saw me sleeping there, and she said, oh, it's a little girl. She's asleep. And she backed away, shut the door, and left me in peace. And that's how I knew I know my place. I know my place. Because Sister Mary was the sister to Louise, who were the Pinard's sisters, who were related to the Dupinis. The Dupinis were the ones who had all the estates and exporting all this agriculture. They were money people. They were white. They were Caucasian, and they were like land barons and business barons. And yeah, I was in that mansion at One Love Lane in Rosa Dominica, and the rich old lady who had a bad reputation of being such a nasty person, she was not. She let me sleep in peace. And that's where I learned my place is wherever I chose to rest my head is my home. And I'm very selective. I'm not going to choose the streets. I'm not going to choose the flop house. I'm not going to choose any of these places, the crack house, the crack den. What you all choose for yourselves is not for me. It's not acceptable for me. Because I have a sense of myself that causes you to hate, and you must understand where your hatred is coming from. It's because of your own sense of yourself. Just because you're living in a place where you're lacking or you appear to be lacking, you can pull yourself out of there. You have to say, this is not my lot. If my mother is working here, it's not my job. I'm not working there. But I deserve to be here because I'm a little girl. There is an empty room, beautiful room. Why not me sleeping in that bed? My mother did not choose to sleep in that bed because she was employed in the house. She had her own quarters. Imagine they had quarters, servants' quarters, I suppose. Not necessarily. Perhaps it had its room. It had its own bathroom. I remember when I would flush the toilet, there were these little baby crayfish in the water, in the toilet bowl when I flushed. This is where I had a bad experience of having worms. And oh my God, because you're running around in your bare feet. That's another thing. Be mindful of tapeworms and even worms we're eating fruit and things with worms, and then you get worms. So they give us expectorants. They give us worm medicine. They call it syrup that expels these worms. And my God, I had a horror story of when I had a worm in my booty and I was trying to shit and the worm came out halfway, and I was horrified because, oh my God, I could feel it moving. It's still alive. And I called my mother because I was afraid. I was afraid to touch that thing. And when I called my mom heard through the louvered doors that I was in distress on the toilet with a worm in my butt. And my mother not dealing with that shit. My mother, light-skinned white women, they can be really mean. So she just left me there in despair. Luckily, there's lots of toilet paper. I never used that much toilet paper in my life, and I rolled it around my hand, and I tried, and every time I went to do it, I could feel the worm moving. I'm like, oh my God, I was so grossed out. So what I finally did is I had to, because I had no choice, because I wasn't going to sit there all day, because I would try to push the worm out, and I would feel the damn worm trying to get back in, and that was a pretty sizable worm. So finally I did it. I took the friggin' paper covered hand of mine and I held on to that thing and I pulled it out and I screamed, and I did it. I managed. I take care of shit. I literally take care of shit because I've never had parents taking care of me. I've always had to make my own way, and people still hate me. They don't know. They think, oh, you're in the big house. All they see me is I'm always in some big house. I don't own these big houses because I don't want to be saddled with that. Mind you, I have these talents, abilities, capabilities, and I always look for someone like-minded. But people, for some reason, never seem to want to pair with me. They don't want to, partner with me. I always offer partnerships and collaborations with people. People come to me and I'm like, what is your role here? Why are you here? Because you just seem to be a nuisance. You are aimless and you're not doing anything. I have things for you. I always have solutions, and they always back away. They are never interested in improving themselves, in rising. They want to stay in that same place where they could cry to me. So I'm just putting this out to say, those of you who like to cry the blues, stop doing it and stop doing it to me, because you can lift yourself, you can elevate yourself all around you. People are offering you things, giving you things, and instead of accepting it graciously and being thankful, you tend to hate and resent them. Don't do that. Don't do that. Be thankful for all of your blessings. It was a blessing for that girl to come to my place of dwelling and to do an errand for her mother, to my mother, for her to find my bone and to she feasted on that bone. That told me how hungry, told me that girl was starving. She was a girl who was hungry, starving, eating my bone, gnawed it down. She grind that thing with her teeth down to a powder. I've never seen that in my life because I've never been around such poverty. Okay, that's why they hate me. Stop hating people who appear to have. They don't all have. Some people have because they've stolen from others. I never stole from anyone. What I have always done is be very generous and share. I share everything I have. So the best thing to do is to come around me, but don't try to rob me. Don't try to scam me. Don't try to scheme. Don't try to, I'm finessing her. She's so stupid. No, I'm not stupid. I think that you are in need. I think you are a good person because I'm a good person. But unfortunately, few of you are. Many of you are just not only parasitic, but you are evil. You're evil. It's not enough for you to feed off others, but you got to try to destroy them in the process. And that's where you black people, I'm talking to you black people. I know the rest of the world, they're not any better than us, but I'm talking to us because we're the ones at the bottom of the freaking barrel that need to get the hell out, get out, and stop pulling each other back down. You must try and boost your sisters, your brothers, your neighbors. You see somebody in need, you don't let them be a beggar. You give to them, even if they hate you. You give because that to me says that you have to give. You have abundance. You are blessed with plenty. And that is your ticket to success. Don't be stingy. Don't be greedy. Don't be mean. Don't be cruel. I mean, this girl's father is a rich man. I was on his land. I was driven on his land by my rich relatives because they know him. And they drove me up there. This man had wild horses. He lived on the hill. He had his big tract of land and it was like just bush. And he had wild horses. I'm like, what? I didn't even know we had horses in Dominica. But Mr. Green had on his going down towards what? Anyway, I won't say where because, it's telling a lot. Yes, I'm the storyteller, Domina Della Pie, Mistress Sasha Storm. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, subscribe. And yes, let's start talking. We can comment about these things because most of us come from, I wouldn't say poverty, but we are not rich people. We don't associate with the rich people. And that's why I live amongst them. I live around them. But they're not my friends. Because come on, let's face it. Rich people look down on the rest of us. And I'm black. And I'm dark-skinned black. Even if I'm lighter now, I started out black. And for those of you who don't like me using that word to describe me, hey, you can call yourself whatever you want. I hear you calling yourselves white. That's okay too. It's just a word. And words in language, in flux, subject to change. Okay? All right. Thank you. Good day.